Welcome back to the Dormant Politics Podcast. My name is Justin Fisher.
I'm Nolan Flaherty.
And I'm Austin Vertine. On today's podcast, we discuss the Green New Deal and we debate climate change. Yes, we're debating whether science is real.
So yes, Austin, it is pretty sad that we have to go over this once again, but it's been really cold here in Springfield, and I mean, how else are we going to solve it? We have to look to the president.
We need a dose of global warming.
We need a dose of global warming. Donald J. Trump.
I mean, this is classic Donald Trump. I mean, let's be honest here. Did anyone vote for Donald Trump for policy? Maybe. Or did we vote for Donald Trump because he is a madman behind the Twitter, tweeting at 3 a.m., saying that we need a big dose of global warming? It's comedy. It's funny stuff. I think that's why the people voted for the President of the United States. But we digress on the stupid president's tweets. I want to talk about the Green New Deal. Okay. I'm going to visit Vox, because it's stupid and hilarious. This is Vox by David Roberts on January 7th, 2019. The Green New Deal explained. It's an insurgent movement. It's pushing Democrats to back an ambitious climate change solution. Here's a picture of millennials in the article that says, "Dear Democrats, step up or step aside," because we know that these people holding posters know exactly how to solve the crisis in climate change. And it goes on to say, if the recent report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, I didn't even know that thing existed, is to be believed, humanity has just over a decade, I believe it's 12 years, to get carbon emissions under control before catastrophic climate change impacts become unavoidable, and then it starts crapping on the Republican Party, saying that we ignore or deny the problem, so on and so forth. So, essentially, the Green New Deal is divided into two sections mostly. It's kind of becoming broader and broader as it grows in numbers and so on and so forth. It's kind of divided into solving economic inequality and at the same time tackling climate change, which of course is probably the stupidest New Deal since the actual New Deal. So first I wanted to, Austin, can you give me an idea of what they mean by tackling these economic inequalities in the Green New Deal?
Okay. Firstly, I do want to say on the name, I think it's a fantastic name, and I think it is like when a musician does like a play on words in an album, to a prior musician that they looked up to. And FDR is like that musician that we look up to. He is
Billy Joel. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like he is the GOAT when it comes to the Democratic Party. And his New Deal, he was saying to Americans, "Hey, look at this New Deal I've got."
He said, "Here I am. I'm going to rock
again,
you like a hurricane."
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
The GOAT Democrat is probably Andrew Johnson, when the Democratic Party was the party of slavery. But, I mean, if you want to take FDR, that's fine, too.
FDR was a vital figure in the history of the Democratic Party and ultimately this nation, because we cannot just divide people by parties and say that they were important to the party and they weren't important to the country. I digress. I think that the name, the New Deal, it relates to this new era of policy that the Democratic Party is moving forward to. We're talking about public free tuition for everybody. We are talking about universal health care, finally getting single payer, the healthcare system that most Americans want.
Woo! Oh, yeah.
We are talking free pre-K education, something
free 99, baby.
Something that is that has been shown to be very important in the progress of a young person. Mm-hmm. These are all issues that are going to help the future of this country, and I think that's a bold and ambitious plan. Will it get passed? I don't know. It might be too big for its own good, and the country might be too polarized. And to be honest, we might not be suffering enough to be fully on board with this.
I think that's a good point. I don't think a lot of people are ready to put money into. I mean, the main part of this, I think, is the environment. The way it's addressed, the Green New Deal, it gives the implication that it's going to be first fixing the environment. So I don't think people look at the environment as something that they prioritize as an issue that needs to be solved right away, even though research is telling them that it is an issue, a vital issue. So I don't really know how something so substantial is going to be passed.
To be fair, the Green New Deal is not actually green. A bill is paper. It's white. So it's not actually going to be green.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, and it's made by paper,
Well,
which
I-
of course is...
well, I know it was
I
made-
really hope that the bill is written on hemp paper.
Yeah, it better be written. You can't cut down a tree for this.
I
This
agree.
is so contradictory.
Okay, you know what makes me angry? I don't understand. If in 2020 the Democrats don't win the White House, the House, and the Senate, and then are able to appoint 9 justices that are incredibly liberal because they'll have the power to impeach all of the conservative ones, I don't understand it. Do you know how easy it is to campaign when free is the number one most used word in your campaign? It's so simple. Free college, free health care. It's ungodly how simple it is to run a campaign
Yeah, you just
use free
You
all the
ask
time.
one simple question: How?
Amen.
How's it going to be free?
And then
So do you think, like, if a corporation or a private business says they do a buy one get one free offer, you don't think that their sales go up?
oh,
maybe.
they definitely do. People
They
love
definitely
that shit.
go up. Buy one orange, get another orange for free.
I wouldn't trust that. So
Nobody
I
does
wanna
that
get
with
a, I want to
produce.
get a BOGO.
Nobody
of
does that
orange.
with produce.
Okay, anyway, regardless.
That is
I think
it's
genetically
pretty gross.
modified.
It's pretty gross.
That is GMO.
Alright, regardless, okay? The word free, you are putting a stigma around the word free, and free is not the
$3.99,
right
baby.
it's not the right word. I would use the word universal.
Oh,
Universal is such a better word.
I'm surprised
than
Justin
free.
doesn't like the word free. I don't know. Free market, free
Amen.
trade.
I like it quite a bit. Just when it's not in front of healthcare and college and all the other stupid stuff.
You like the word free when it's not actually free.
Mhm.
You like free when it comes to
I like
not
the word-
actually in quantitative
the word
money figures.
Cheap.
When free, we're talking about liberty. We're
Amen.
talking-
I love it.
Okay.
All right. Think of it this way. With this deal, it's going to require a mass amount of money, billions, possibly trillions of dollars.
Trillions of dollars.
But if we think of it this way, the democratic way, money.
What is it?
What is money? I mean, a wise man once
We always
told
find
me,
it for wars. We always get it somehow for
A
wars.
wise man once told me, money.
Why are you taking my talking points now,
money?
Justin?
Money only has value because we give it money. However,
That's true.
we owe a lot of money to China, which is one country that is not going to stop producing carbon into the environment, these greenhouse gases. China is the biggest harm to our environment.
Even though China is a part of the Paris Climate Accords,
Yeah.
and America
Are they?
is not.
Wow. I forgot that the Paris Climate Accords literally mean nothing. They're literally a piece of
It's
paper.
a good
and I
first
certainly was
step.
What? It's a good first step when the world is ending for
It's
12
a
years?
good first step.
Okay, let me get
We
this
want
straight.
international
me get this straight.
cooperation.
Let's say the world is actually ending in 12 years, and Alexandria Ocasio Cortez is correct. The world is going to be in devastation in 12 years. You think handing around a little piece of hemp paper because we hate deforestation in the Paris Climate Accords is a good first step when we're literally about to die?
You know what?
I won't even be able to have kids because they're going to die
You know
on a
what?
climate change infested planet.
At least we'll have universal basic.
Amen! Amen! Paris Climate Accords are the stupidest thing on planet Earth because they literally do nothing. But let us comment on the Green New Deal, okay? The issue of climate change, apparently for the Democratic Party, is the number one issue. Okay, when Bernie Sanders was asked about the issue at the border, he immediately changed subjects and said the world is ending in 12 years.
Do you know what
We
the
need to
greatest,
stop worrying
the
about
greatest
this.
threat to American national security?
It's climate change.
It is indirectly climate change.
Oh, okay, yes.
They've done various studies and said that part of the
Who's
reason
It's
they've
they.
done
Sure.
they've done I've read studies where they've analyzed some of the causes of the Syrian civil war.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is famine, and that's caused by climate change. It's caused by so what that they live on a piece of desert.
It is literally just
That
desert.
might be the reason.
I don't know.
Either way, climate change is having an effect on all of us. A polar vortex is a part of climate change. Climate change is leading to a disparity in our seasons. Our seasons are becoming less similar in a way. And we're going to get to bitter cold.
I
And then
like
we're going
seasonal
to
changes.
We're going to get to excruciating
Makes
hot.
me feel like I am
our,
in the
our
right spot in the
oceans,
year.
Our oceans are going to get hotter as our ice caps melt and we add more water. And suddenly Miami could be gone. Hasta la vista, baby.
Okay, all right.
More hurricanes hit. We get another Katrina. We get another Sandy. We get another Irma.
Well,
we did
I
not
really,
want this.
I'm not an environmentalist. I mean, I don't want to say that. I'm not an environmental scientist. I'm not a climate scientist. Okay, I'm far from being an expert on this.
Yeah,
And-
you just told me the other day that you think recycling is stupid.
I do. And I don't think the entire Democratic Party is an expert on this either, but I digress. I do want to take a look at... I want to be a realist about climate change, okay? We got 12 years to save the planet. If that's what somebody smarter than me is saying, that's fine, okay? I'll agree with them. But if I want to take a look at... This is the energy something... hold on, now I gotta find this. We're going to cut that. We're going to edit that. This is the Energy Information Administration of the Department of Energy, I think, of the federal government. It kind of dissects energy consumption in the United States, all right? So if I look at this little pie chart here, we got about 14% coming from coal, 29% coming from natural gas, 37% coming from petroleum, which, of course, made from crude oil, 9% coming from nuclear power. Shout out to Illinois and Joliet, baby. Renewable energy accounts for 11%. Okay, but within that renewable energy, 19% is wood, 21% is biofuels, and then only 6% is solar, and another 21% of that 11% is wind. Okay, Alexandria Ocasio Cortez and the Democratic Party want these renewable energies to be 100% of the country's consumption in the next decade. That is impossible.
They also said that when the three-point shot was implemented, that it wouldn't take over the game.
Okay.
People were like, the three-point shot? It's impossible. Nobody's going to be shooting threes all game. And now look at the NBA. I
don't know if that's a great
the players
analogy.
Have to shoot three-pointers to make it in the league.
I'm
just saying that things evolve.
And
Governments evolve. Energy systems evolve. The fact we're even talking about renewables at 11% of America's energy consumption is a success.
Oh, it is, and the world is still going to end in 12 years. Let's talk about other sources of climate change.
This is progress. We're making progress. And you're in the way of progress because you want fossil fuels. Fossil fuels, which
cheap.
come from the ancestors of plants and animals. Thank you, NASA
That's right.
kids. We need to be moving forward so that our planet heals, so that our planet doesn't get warmer. Because the more carbon we put into the air, carbon's a greenhouse gas, baby.
Okay.
The more carbon we put into the air, the more heat is on this planet.
Sure.
And that could lead to catastrophic effects.
Alright, so that means we'd have to get 100% of our energy to pretty much come from solar and wind, because those are the only realistic ones. How on earth do we do that in 10 years? It's impossible. I mean, the state of Illinois, for example...
It's a plan. It might not be 100%, but we can make progress. I don't know why you have to stand and spit in progress's face.
Because we got 12 years to save the planet? I don't know. The planet's going to end.
Do you believe that? Do you believe that?
That's people smarter than me. The Intergovernmental Association of Climate Change says that.
Basically what they're saying
Democratic
is
Party
that
says
the world is not going to end. But if the planet increases by 2 degrees Celsius, the effects of climate change are irreversible.
I don't even get
That's
that.
what it
What
means.
does that mean?
That's what it means.
We had like a change of like 40 degrees from yesterday to today.
That's not the planet, though. We're talking.
What is the whole planet increasing in
We're
temperature
talking about
mean?
the core. We're talking about the hot magma.
I don't know. Do we really have
We're talking about the ocean. We're talking about the ocean temperatures.
For example, the one thing that Democrats and Republicans have agreed on for the last 10 years and haven't done anything, of course, is infrastructure. All right, everybody gets on the stage and they like cuddle over their agreement on infrastructure projects. Nothing ever happens with this, of course. Nobody actually cares about it. But one of the biggest contributors to climate change is concrete. How on earth can we have an enormous infrastructure project without using concrete?
Do you have a source on that?
Yes, it's my lab instructor for biology and chemistry.
His name is Dav, not Dave.
He goes by Dav. And you know what? I trust him. I didn't even Google it. I trust him.
I don't even believe that. I'm sorry. Like, that's not even...
He knows a lot of useless knowledge.
I think he's got a master's degree.
Just because when it's a hot summer day, road looks like it's shining in front of you.
I think it has to do with the production of concrete, maybe?
Not necessarily the implementation of concrete.
Maybe. I don't know. But
then again, he also told you that you breathe out
which is
more
true.
Carbon dioxide than your vehicle
which is true. We tested it.
Emits.
We tested it.
But that's not true for everybody.
Yeah, it's also not true because...
Yeah, it has variables, but the fact that it's even similar...
The fact that some of the air that we breathe in is... The carbon dioxide levels are a result of carbon dioxide that is being pumped into the air by our vehicles. I mean, we're not producing
Here is
the carbon
the
dioxide
difference.
itself.
We do produce
here's
there's
the
natural
difference.
carbon dioxide in
Well,
the
yes.
plant.
All right,
I mean-
here's the difference between us and a vehicle. Besides the fact we can critically think for ourselves and we can talk. We, as human beings, we emit carbon out of our mouths or our nose when we exhale.
Mm-hmm.
But we are also taking in carbon. Carbon is 18% of our body.
Yeah.
We are taking in carbon, whether it's through beef, whether it's through the sun. We take in carbon. We take in just as much carbon as we take out.
Mm-hmm.
Vehicles do not do that. Vehicles do not take in carbon. They only emit carbon.
Well, I'm just talking about when you breathe, right? I mean,
That's
what is
what
oxygen?
that's
It's
what I'm
only
saying.
21% of the atmosphere.
And what I'm saying to you is that we indirectly get the same amount of carbon in that we get out. That's the thing. Also, us breathing is a natural thing, and it's been happening since Adam and Eve or Adam and Steve.
And a lot of carbon dioxide is natural. The production of carbon dioxide on the planet has existed over the past 4.5 billion years.
Okay.
Vehicles are not necessarily natural.
So to clarify on that cement thing, I'm looking at a study from Yale University. It says that carbon dioxide emissions 5% are caused by cement production. However, they're doing some research, and they did a study, Yale University, and said that there's in a process called carbonation, the cement can actually reabsorb some of the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So building sidewalks can actually be beneficial. So
I don't get this at all. I don't understand this.
So like producing cement itself gives off carbon dioxide, but the sidewalks themselves can actually absorb some of that carbon dioxide. So cement, I'm sorry, Dav, it might not have been the best.
There is a decent. I don't know. It depends how much carbon they actually take in. I don't get this.
Who
I'm
would
so
have thought?
confused.
Who would have thought Doberman Politics would be talking about environmental chemistry? Here's my thing as well: is that vehicles they also emit carbon dioxide, and some more than others.
Carbon monoxide, actually.
That's what I was going to get to. They also emit a lot worse things into the air as well.
Those are. I mean, that's
other
just deadly,
greenhouse
right? That's
gases,
not-
carbon monoxide. You know, these are carcinogens.
This is what the EPA was originally designed for. Let's make sure carbon monoxide isn't in our air. Let's make sure the water isn't, polluted. I mean, now it's just completely different. Now it's don't produce carbon dioxide. That is a natural effect of the
Okay,
plant.
it's a natural thing. Everybody knows at the EPA that when you breathe out carbon dioxide.
You know, the sad
Sure.
thing is, I don't think everyone in the world knows that.
I'd agree with that statement as well.
That is pretty sad. But
My point being is that I'm not a climate scientist. I have no idea where this is going to go. I'm sure a lot of people are right that climate change might be catastrophic. The only point that I'm saying is that the infrastructure that we have devoted to fossil fuels is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the state of Illinois, for example, right? About 48% coming from nuclear, 48% coming from coal, and then you have about 2% coming from renewables, and then another 2% of other. I mean, that's how are we gonna solve that?
But before oil, there was coal, and coal was definitely in the 70-80% of our energy supply before oil was.
Mm-hmm.
And look at where coal is now.
It's not on the decline.
It is on the
I would say
decline
it's on
if
the
we're looking
decline.
at it at a long-term
It's a-
projectile.
coal's it's dangerous.
Yeah, but it's still an enormous consumption in the United States. Sure, it's declining, so is oil, but it's not declining anywhere near the rate
And
renewables are increasing.
I've got a bone to gripe with you, okay? Every single Republican says the same old diluted talking point. I'm not a climate scientist, but blank. And usually it's just spitting in the face of climate scientists that actually study this, and most of them,
But climate scientists aren't economists.
the overwhelming majority of climate scientists believe that humans are making a negative impact on our environment. And
Okay.
I don't know whether it's Republicans' sheer ignorance to this fact, or whether it's the almighty dollar and greed. I believe it's the latter mostly.
Why is it dollar and greed? It's middle class, it's lower class, and it's also the upper class that's benefiting from natural gas, coal, oil.
It is greed.
Okay, what kind of
Republican-
vehicle do you drive?
I drive a 2004 Honda Accord.
That is a gasoline powered vehicle, baby. Not only did it,
So am I not allowed to talk about Climate change?
No, I'm just saying that everybody benefits from fossil fuels.
Well, I
You
think,
can't say it's a greed thing.
Fossil fuels are definitely out of convenience right now. You don't see very many charging stations for your car. It's obviously people go and get gas on a daily basis, and it's going to remain that way for years unless.
Which is why climate change should not just be an environmental issue.
There used to be a time.
Economic issue.
Listen, boss. There used to be a time when flat screen TVs were $2,000. You know what they are now? They're like $200 at Walmart.
Yeah.
The market is going to adapt.
Amen.
We are going to see
the market will
electric
adapt
cars.
towards renewable cars. Absolutely.
I think
Absolutely.
It already is adapting as we speak.
I mean, the market will adapt to, one, electric cars, 100%, and it will adapt to renewable energy. I am 100% okay
But here's the
with
difference.
the market adapting to that.
Absolutely. Here's the difference, though. We need somebody to step in, and we need somebody to accelerate this progress in the market.
That's Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, baby. She is the smartest person on the environment and economics combined.
I'm saying that we need to incentivize this. I don't know whether it's subsidies that we give to car companies to make electric cars. I know that Volkswagen is coming out with an electric car pretty soon. Nissan already has one. Chevy already has one. Ford already has one. We need to continue to incentivize it and continue so that in a few years, these cars are affordable to middle-class families and they're attractive to buy as well.
Well, I think
affordable.
The problem with that is that you have to look at where these manufacturers of cars are getting their parts, what price they're getting them for, and I think you're going to see when the demand for parts that create electric cars increases, when the demand for batteries and that demand increases, price is going to also increase, and then as a result, the oil industry their demand is going to go down, and I mean prices are going to go down as well. So I mean, if manufacturers are offered lower prices to create gas vehicles in order to sustain the petroleum industry, I think they're not going to pass that up.
And I mean, when you look at electric cars, for example, sure you're getting rid of the carbon dioxide and the carbon monoxide that replaces. Because if I get an electric car, that electric car essentially replaces a car that would have produced carbon monoxide in the environment. But let's take the state of Illinois, for example. If you have everybody in the state of Illinois get rid of their gasoline-powered vehicle, sure, you have a decline in the use of carbon monoxide in the state, right?
Carbon dioxide.
And, well, carbon monoxide is the worst thing that comes out of cars because it's actually toxic, which also heats the planet. It's also a greenhouse gas. But you have an enormous increase in the use of electricity, which comes from coal and nuclear power in the state of Illinois, which are both considered greenhouse gases, right? Nuclear power emits water vapor, but because it's considered hot water vapor, it'll still heat the planet. It doesn't necessarily dissipate how we would want it to. Because it's heated, it would be considered an effect of climate change. So, I mean, sure, you're replacing gasoline-powered vehicles, but you're not necessarily helping the environment by just amping up your use of electricity. So electric cars aren't necessarily a great fix to solve climate change.
I mean,
it has been proven, though, that electric cars reduces the carbon footprint of vehicles. And it reduces the carbon footprint of people.
Certainly. I mean, I would be one to own an electric car. I think it's a good mission. I would definitely do it. It's not a big...
I would never do it.
It's just... Well, yeah...
It's got to make a noise. You ever seen a Tesla video? It's silent. It's weird.
Yeah, I get it. You love oil, whatever.
Amen.
But I'm not as infatuated with oil as Justin, as I think that an electric car is a good alternative to gas. But as I said, I just think that it's hard because of the power, the strength of those who control the petroleum industry and the way that people can control the price of oil, especially in the Middle East where a lot of our oil is exported from worldwide. It's just hard to see a change like that, even if we provide a Green New Deal in our country and we're going to try to target a source of renewable energy. It's hard to see oil falling off in the next coming years without a big shift in power in who owns the petroleum industry.
But I totally agree with most of those points, Nolan. But it is also partially fueled, this lack of action.
Fueled, huh?
No pun intended. It's fueled by one party consistently dismissing climate change. Consistently dismissing the idea of its existence.
I think you see a lot less people dismissing it and just saying it's not realistic.
Continues to perpetrate the status quo when it comes to energy policy. Saudi Arabia is a country that, one, we shouldn't really have close ties ties diplomatically,
Oh,
nor
sorry.
economically.
We don't talk about that. Okay, we depend on Saudi Arabia. We let that one go. Anyway, continue.
I think you've emphasized this point even more.
Yeah. This is a country that has horrible human rights violations, and it has us, by the ankles, basically, when it comes to fuel.
Don't forget, they just allowed women to drive this year. Congrats, Saudi Arabian women.
Amen.
And that has partially been perpetrated by both Democrats and Republicans. But there is one party, only one party, that dismisses climate change as a thing, as an issue. And that's the problem. There are other countries in the world where conservative parties agree that climate change is real and that climate change is man-made. UK believes so. The French Conservative Party believes so. Most of Western civilization, conservative parties believe that climate change is real, except the Americans, except the Republican Party, who refuses to acknowledge it.
I'm not here to deny the acknowledgement of climate change. I acknowledge climate change. I'm just telling you that it's mostly an economic issue. And you have to be a realistic economist when analyzing the effects of climate change.
But climate change goes beyond economics. Climate change is a social issue. It is a moral issue because it is our planet's future at stake.
I mean, but let's look at this realistically. The legislation on climate change is going to be purely political, okay? I mean, in the next 10 years...
By who? But by who? It's the Republicans who politicized it
What?
first. It's the Republicans who
The Republicans aren't even talking about it.
Exactly, that's the problem. They refuse to acknowledge it, and when they do talk about it, they dismiss it. Oh, climate change, it's such a hippie issue.
I mean, but let's be honest. Like, the issue is just going to be played through politics. It's going to be, a normal, stupid issue that people are going to argue about until eventually it probably dissipates because you can't have an unprecedented infrastructural change in the country that's never been seen before, right? So eventually it's probably just going to die down. The Democrats are going to realize that Americans and their constituents don't really care anymore. Or, I mean, let's see what happens. Let's see if we take a... So if the world is actually ending in 12 years, because I want to keep looking at it like that, if the world is actually ending in 12 years, then we need an unprecedented, extremely radical change in infrastructure and energy consumption in the country. So if we even take something that's not even close to as radical as that, like Emmanuel Macron is doing in France, something that's not even as close to as radical as that, and just raise taxes on petroleum, start subsidizing, renewable energies, which causes a raise in taxation, then you're going to see riots like you do in Paris. Right? Imagine if you had an unprecedented change in infrastructure in the country where we've seen only riots happen when you have such a small change in infrastructure and taxation like you do in France. The Democrats will lose their constituency because everyone's going to be pissed off when they have an enormous raise in taxes on petroleum and in general because of these subsidies towards energy. Right? I mean, because you would need enormous subsidies if an energy consumption is only 11% of our consumption. So the Democrats are going to have to shift their policy in the coming years because they will lose their constituency if they really want to tackle this radically.
I think it's a good point you make, and I think something to be considered with this is that from a philosophical standpoint, people are inherently selfish, and it just determines, and their viewpoints are just going to depend on what they want. I mean, if someone's, let's say a lot of Republicans, I'm not going to single out Republicans and say they're all selfish. I know a lot of good Republican people, but a lot of Republicans are well off. They've made well for themselves, and they don't really need to rely on the help of the government, which is a little bit different from the Democratic Party, as we know. They support more welfare. They support more well-being of the people overall. And I think the way a lot of people see it is if in the short term my taxes are going to be raised, and this was the case in France, if my taxes are going to be raised and I'm paying more for oil and the environment is fine for me, I'm just living out my life, I'm successful, I don't see any problems with the climate, so to speak, someone is just going to be angered by that, and they're not going to accept climate change for what it is. And I think just the idea that people are selfish and that they want to live out their lives with as little cost to them as possible, it goes the same for taxes. Someone is going to support any tax plan that's going to put more money in their pocket. That's just the way it is. And I think it's a similar precedent you could say with the environment in saying that if I'm doing well off as a person and I think my environment, my life itself is going fine, they're not going to want to pay more for other qualities, even though it's been proven that some of these programs that are being proposed or introduced are obviously going to help the well-being of the world as a whole in the future. So.
You both have mentioned France, and it was implemented disastrously. And it has become a talking point that many on the right use against climate change, in saying, well, you're going to tax taxpayers for simply living their lives, and they have to transport somewhere through the use of vehicles.
What do you think Macron should have done differently?
Well, the problem was that the implementation is basically corporate welfare. It's essentially austerity, because by not taxing the production of oil and taxing oil companies, he taxed the consumers of oil.
You're always going to tax consumers of oil.
Blaming the consumers of oil for this.
For example, when you have the petroleum gas in the United States, a gasoline tax in the United States, that was implemented in the late 90s or the early 21st century at least, when you had an additional gasoline tax at the pump, and that was placed on oil production companies, right? And then that passed on to gasoline refineries, and then that passed on to the pump. I mean, if you look at this from a purely economical standpoint, that is going to end up at the pump every single time.
And that's the problem. Is that in France it was austerity. They put the blame essentially on the citizens of France for using vehicles that consume fossil fuels. And it creates a dilemma for policymakers around the world as to how to fix this, because I think many people in France, they weren't protesting because they don't believe in climate change, or they don't even believe that they shouldn't be using fossil fuels. They were protesting because it was extremely unfair to them. And although we don't know,
always going to be
we don't know the politics of France, and of course, France is going to protest because that's what France does. They've always done that historically. In America,
they did cut off a few heads, if I recall.
Yeah.
In the Reign of Terror.
Get the guillotine. America is not like that. I'm fearful that if we ever get to a point where neoliberalism gets to its worst point, where we see a Democratic president imposing a fuel tax on Americans will simply take it, because we don't really have that revolutionary side to us, that rebellious side that will protest out in the streets.
I forgot that our country wasn't built on literally the biggest protest in the history of mankind.
But we don't protest anymore.
What?
We hardly protest. We do not protest like the French.
You're not wrong. If we would if we had an enormous gasoline
The French
tax.
people have an expectation from their government, and the French people demand change, and they will use violent tactics, not necessarily through killing people.
So let me just wrap up your comments. You're saying that it's okay to screw over the American taxpayer because they won't protest and riot.
No, I think he's saying that Americans don't hold their government accountable enough overall. And
Absolutely.
I think they'll be pretty pissed off and hold their government accountable if the Democratic Party gives an enormous tax increase at the pump. Because even if you do your plan where Macron screwed up...
I'm fearful that there's too many Americans that are tuned out and will simply take it in their bank accounts.
People will listen to those in power in front of them, and I think that's been proven with Donald Trump. We've seen a lot more people sort of come out and deny climate change as being something that's not real. And obviously, I hope you all that are listening can acknowledge the fact that the climate is changing as a result of human action. So, what action we take coming up in the coming years, whether it's a Green New Deal or whether the world does end in 12 years, we will have to see what happens in the future. And I hope that we all live beyond 2030.
For sure. And I hope that you continue to listen to the Dorm Room Politics podcast, even if the world is ending in 12 years. Whether we have a Green New Deal, great, we'll talk about it. Whether the world is coming to an end,
great, we'll talk about it.
Tune in while the world burns.
Doomsday dorm room politics special. I mean, endless opportunities here.
We'll be there.
Thank you guys again for listening, and we'll see you next Friday. And be sure to drop us a review on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify. Get us up in the ratings. Share us with your friends, and follow us on Twitter at Dorm Room Poly. Thank you once again from the three males here from Springfield. I'm Nolan Flaherty.
I'm Austin Vertine.
And I'm Justin Fisher. We'll see you guys next time.